Georgian public broadcaster, Mr. Secretary General, we have election day in Georgia today. How close do you follow the process, I mean the organization, and how important is this election for NATO, for future cooperation? Thank you very much.
The elections in Georgia are indeed very important for Georgia, of course, first and foremost, but furthermore, the elections, the parliamentary elections this year, as well as the presidential elections next year, are a litmus test of the way democracy works in Georgia. So allies are following the elections very closely. I had an opportunity to discuss the elections with the Georgian political leadership when I visited Georgia some weeks ago. I'm impressed by the preparations of the elections. I'm sure that the Georgian authorities do all they can to make sure that the elections will be free, fair, and transparent. In that respect, I appreciate that the Georgian government has invited so many international monitors or observers to monitor the elections, including members of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. So we congratulate Georgia on the elections. Elections are, of course, an essential part of a well-functioning democracy. So today is really a day to celebrate.
National Public Radio.
Terry Schultz with NPR and CBS, sir. You said that most partnered operations have resumed in Afghanistan. So if you could give us any insight into what may have changed in between the partial suspension and now that allowed ISAF to resume any of those training procedures that were suspended. And also General Allen said in an interview disseminated by the Pentagon that the attack had succeeded in creating mistrust between the two sides. You don't seem to agree with that statement. I'd like your thoughts on that and his additional comment that it might change the way ISAF trains Afghans. Thank you.
I fully agree with General Allen. I have stated repeatedly that the insider attacks threaten to undermine trust and confidence between foreign troops and Afghan security forces. Some weeks ago, our commanders in Afghanistan took prudent and temporary measures in order to prevent these insider attacks. These measures included some restrictions on joint operations. It is for the commanders in the field to take such tactical decisions. It's their assessment whether the security situation allows to resume joint operations. I have taken note of the fact that it has now been decided to resume such joint operations, and partners, almost all partnered activities have now been resumed, and that reflects an assessment made by our commanders as regards the overall security situation.
Not to nitpick too much, but you say they threaten to undermine. He says they have created mistrust. Those are different. Attack the green on blue.
No doubt that insider attacks have undermined trust and confidence, absolutely. And it's understandable. I mean, people ask, understandably, why is it that we send trainers to Afghanistan to help the Afghan security forces. And then Afghan soldiers or policemen turn their weapons against the trainers who are there in the first place to help them. So people can't understand that, including our trainers on the ground. So obviously, this strategy aims at undermining trust and confidence, and to a certain degree it has also succeeded in that. And this is the reason why we have taken and will continue to take preventive measures to avoid such insider attacks. We have strengthened vetting and recruitment procedures, strengthened counterintelligence measures, and taken other steps. And these measures are regularly reviewed, and we will not hesitate to take further steps if necessary.
James?
Yes, Brooks Signal, Jane's Defense. Change of subject. The budgetary situation and the prospects of the future are getting so severe in Europe that ideas are now being floated that were unthinkable even 3 or 4 years ago. For instance, at the EU Cyprus presidency conference in mid-September on pooling and sharing, it was suggested that each member state might set aside or should set aside a portion of its national defense R&D budget to collectively fund P&S capability projects. My question to you, is there any discussion within NATO along similar lines? Do you expect this from the ministers next week? Or is there a possibility of loosening up the common fund to produce direct support for smart defense initiatives? Thank you. Beyond what we have today.
I think it would be an excellent idea to focus on research and development. I will leave it to national governments to decide how they conduct their budgetary procedures. It may be that some countries will reserve a specific amount of money for specific projects. That's not for NATO to decide. But there is an obvious need for a focused effort on research and development. There is a clear risk that investments in research and development are squeezed under the current budgetary pressure. And research and investments in research and development is really an investment in the future. I would expect that to be part of the discussions defense ministers will have next week. But again, I think it is a national decision how defense budgets are arranged in details.
Aviation Weekly at the moment.
You mentioned 2 new smart defense projects. What are those? And then you also mentioned 10 upcoming ones. Maybe you could name 1 or 2 good examples. And then the second question, you've said in the past that NATO will not intervene in Syria, but there were reports last week of parts of their chemical weapons arsenal moving around. I mean, do you still stick by your position of non-intervention?
First, on smart defense projects, as I told you, they are in the pipeline, so I'm not in a position to go into too many details, but I can indicate that we have projects in the pipeline concerning cyber security, and also further projects on countering roadside bombs and other improvised explosive devices. So they're highly relevant projects. On Syria, of course, we monitor the situation closely. The issue of chemical weapons is, of course, a matter of great concern, but our position remains the same. as it has been. We have no discussions on military options. We do believe that the right way forward as regards Syria is a political solution.
Japanese media.
Hi, my name is Takashi. I'm with NHK Japan Broadcasting Corporation. You just mentioned in order to reduce the number of insider attacks, NATO is ready to take necessary measures. Does that include any extension of your time frame of exit strategy of Afghanistan? And if not, why do you stick to? Do you have to stick to that timetable to get out of Afghanistan by the end of 2014? Thanks.
We stick to the timeline to hand over full responsibility to the Afghans by the end of 2014, first and foremost because we think it's a realistic timeline. We do believe that the Afghan security forces will be able to take full responsibility by that time. I think there's also a strong dynamic within that roadmap, because everybody, including the Afghan security forces and the Afghan authorities, know that we have to be ready by the end of 2014. So actually it puts a lot of pressure on the whole process. And as we have seen steady improvements, as we have handed over provinces to lead Afghan responsibility, there's no reason for changing the timeline. So the brief answer is we stick to the timeline. By the end of 2014, the ISAF combat mission will end. The Afghans will take full responsibility, and we will continue a training mission.
Reuters.
Adrian Koch from Reuters, Secretary General. Could you tell us how many countries have so far said they are prepared to participate in the post-2014 training mission? Roughly how many personnel you think this mission will require, and whether any decisions have been taken yet on its budget?
First, 6 countries, 6 partners have so far announced that they are prepared to contribute to a training mission after 2014. Second, on the number of trainers, we have not made any decision yet. We are in the initial phases of planning the post-2014 mission. Decisions on the exact numbers will be taken at a later stage. And for the same reason, we have not prepared a budget yet. That will be part of the last phases of our planning.
Kuna?
Nawab Khan from the Kuwait News Agency. Mr. Secretary General, will there be any discussion on the situation in the Middle East, in particular on Syria or Libya, during the meeting of the defense ministers next week? And secondly, have you invited any defense ministers from the region, I mean from the Arab world? Thank you.
On the latter, I can answer yes, because we have countries from the region contributing to our missions in Kosovo and Afghanistan, and defense ministers from troop contributing countries, that is, countries that contribute to our operations in Kosovo and Afghanistan, will be invited to the meeting with NATO defense ministers next week. So we will have representatives from countries in North Africa and the Middle East and the Gulf region. And the first part of your question was? No, we have not planned a discussion on Syria and Libya, but of course ministers are free to raise whichever question they might wish to discuss.
El País at the back.
Good afternoon. It's in relation with the news that we've got, we read this morning about Libya and Muammar Gaddafi being killed by an operation, undercover operation of one of the leading countries in the NATO-led operation in Libya. Do you know anything about that? Do your services have anything to say about it? Or is the first news you get? Thank you.
I have no information whatsoever about that story, and I'm not going to speculate in any way on that. And let me remind you that NATO didn't have troops on the ground during our Libya operation.
Over there.
Salim Badawi, France 24 et RFI. Une question en français, s'il vous plaît. Finalement, peut-être je reviens sur la question des armes chimiques en Syrie, mais plus globalement, il n'y a pas une ligne rouge pour l'OTAN concernant les deux dossiers, nucléaire en Iran et chimique en Syrie?
As I told you, we are very much concerned about chemical weapons and weapons of mass destruction in general, of course. But our bottom line is, as it has been, that we don't see a military solution to the problems in Syria. We do believe that the right way forward is a political solution.
We'll go over there. Yeah.
Oui, Secretary General Richard Verly from the Swiss daily Le Temps. We know that there is already a candidate for your succession, Mr. Frattini, and that you may ask for 1 more year. Could you comment on that?
You know the rules. The mandate of Secretary General is 4 years, with the possibility to prolong for further 1 year. And it's for allies to decide on that. For my part, I'm focused on my job at hand, and in particular, our operation in Afghanistan, to make sure that the transition process will continue with the aim to hand over full responsibility to the Afghans by the end of 2014. That's my focus.
We have time for just 2 more questions. We'll take the lady over here.
J'ai 2 questions, excusez-moi. Saïda Ahmed Lamena. La première question, lors des dernières assises de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies, le Mali avait sollicité l'aide de la communauté internationale. Et même M. Didier Reynders avait proposé d'envoyer des troupes pour la formation des forces maliennes. Alors, la première question, dans quelle mesure l'OTAN pourrait intervenir pour aider le Mali à faire face à cette instabilité? Et la deuxième question, quels sont les ministres des pays arabes de défense qui participeront à la prochaine réunion? Merci. N'est-ce pas, vous avez dit qu'il y aurait des ministres de défense représentant certains pays arabes? Alors j'aimerais savoir, si c'est possible, quels sont ces ministres arabes?
Tout d'abord, en ce qui concerne le Mali, l'OTAN, comme une organisation, n'a pas une intention d'intervenir au Mali. Nous poursuivons la situation étroitement, naturellement, mais nous n'avons pas une intention d'intervenir au Mali. En ce qui concerne la participation des ministres de défense de la région, comme exemple, je pourrais mentionner que le Maroc contribue à notre opération au Kosovo. La Jordanie contribue à notre opération en Afghanistan, comme exemple. Mais il y a des autres.
One final question to Imedi, Georgia.
Thank you so much. You mentioned the importance of the election, and the situation inside is very polarized now in Georgia. But the government of Georgia several times stressed their concern connected to Russian military exercises near the border of Georgia. Do you have some latest information about the security situation in the region, and how would you comment on that? Thank you so much.
Overall, I do believe that the security situation remains stable, definitely not satisfactory, but stable. And I don't think the conduct of military operations in the neighborhood changes that. Actually, I had an opportunity to exchange views with Foreign Minister Lavrov, the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, when I met him in New York last week, and we discussed the issue of military operations and agreed that the right way forward is to ensure a maximum of transparency, so we know what is going on. We are strongly committed to such transparency. I hope the Russians similarly are committed to such transparency.
Thank you very much, and we hope to see you at the Defence Ministers meeting next week at NATO headquarters. Thank you.